Hello and welcome to our next session. The subject is intercultural communication, and I am Parvez Khan, Assistant Professor in the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Guwahati University of Science and Technology. The course code for this subject is JMC 201. It's our lecture number 15, which is interacting with strangers. So, today we'll be talking about how to interact with strangers in a culture other than your own, what kind of tools and tips are necessary to initiate conversations with strangers. Why is it important to have a perspective by interacting with strangers? So, this will be pretty much the focus for our session today, and we'll be talking a whole session will revolve around interacting with strangers. But before we start our session, we'll be talking about how to understand and how to communicate with strangers. Let's talk about objectives. The first one is to understand how to communicate with strangers, to know that each culture differs and we need a prior understanding of how people behave and interact. And then obviously initiating and talking can help us understand and help us in adjusting in intercultural settings. So this is pretty much the objectives of this session, and this is pretty important to look into it from this perspective. Why we need to be there, and this is important objectives that communicating with strangers play an important role in helping us adjust in intercultural settings. So we start off with communicating with strangers, how to communicate and what is it about the communication with strangers. And it's important as we communicate the way we do because we are raised in a particular culture and learn its language, rules, and norms. And we are very comfortable in our own settings. We can easily start and initiate conversation with people from our region, but it's very difficult to do this in culture outside your own. So, different cultures and subcultures may have different rules and norms. And the authors that we are going to talk about, Guri Kunst and Kim, basically, we are giving this explanation from their book. They argue that the understanding the other's culture facilitates the cross culture communication. So, basically, when we are talking to strangers, it's basically the facilitation of cross culture communication. You are moving in the right direction. So these two authors, Guri and Kim, believe that intercultural communication. Uh, just miss the slide again. Just let me come there. So yes, we are here again. Just sorry for the mistake. So Guri and Kim believe that intercultural communication can be understood through the basic variables and processes used to describe other forms of communication. And all communication occurs between people who have varying degree of familiarity with each other. So the key factor in understanding intercultural communication is the concept of stranger. So we must understand the concept of stranger to initiate communication with strangers, and that's the key, and that's important in intercultural settings. And this is the definition we have previously used as well, and why I'm using it to give you an idea. Culture is the collective programming of the mind which distinguishes the member of one category of people from another. So, this means if you're from Pakistan and if you go to England, you are different from them. You are in a different category. And it won't be easy to talk to the strangers because there's language barrier, there's cultural barrier. You're not aware of the norms and the culture over there, so that becomes a barrier, and that's why talking to stranger can help. It helps build a perspective. It helps give you an idea of where you are. It gives you a better understanding of the culture you are in. So it's like the author said, it's the beginning of intercultural communication. So talking to strangers is not easy. It's difficult. There's going to be some natural nervousness. There's going to be some confusion, uncertainty, and let's talk about it, about that element as well. So understanding communication is the key, and we must remember that a stranger has limited knowledge of their environment, of its norms and values. If you go to, for example, if you've gone to Africa, as we are not exposed to much of it, even through films or the books or the literature, so we may not be aware of their norms and values. So this means a stranger has limited knowledge of the new environment, of its norms and values. And in turn, the locals have also little knowledge of the stranger, of her, his beliefs, interests, and habits. So this means that they don't know much about you. There would be countries where you'd go, where you'd introduce yourself, where you're from, and they would say, where is it on the map? Can you show it to me on the map? So many people in some cultures they do not have any idea where you're from, what your beliefs are, and particularly those living in low context culture would find it very difficult to understand the high context cultures. And this means that communication with another involves predicting and anticipating the responses. So that's very important point that you predict and anticipate the response, and that helps understand each other to a certain extent. But the key element here that we are going to talk about is uncertainty. Communication with stranger involves relatively greater degree of uncertainty due to the difficulty in predicting a stranger's responses. We may not know how people would respond. For example, if you're sitting in a bus, you can't just go and initiate conversation just like, "Hi, how are you?" Obviously, you will try to anticipate what they're going to say, but you're uncertain how they would respond. Because in some cultures, it may be rude to talk to a stranger, and you never know how to respond. But it's important that we know the tactics and tips and the ways how to deal with strangers. So we experience uncertainty with regard to the stranger's attitudes, feelings, and beliefs. And it's important that because this is how we experience it. And the more at whatever attitude, whatever response, whatever beliefs is coming your way, and that's how we experience uncertainty. Sometimes you may meet a person who's completely opposite to you. It may not be easy for you to get along. But that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of intercultural communication. And that's how you widen your perspective about different cultures, different people, different faiths. That's the key for that. And then we are also uncertain of how to explain strangers' behavior. We never know how they're going to behave, respond. So the author describes these three basic strategies for gathering information. Like the first one, the important one, like how you can gather information, how you can reduce your uncertainty, how you can become at ease. So one of the way is to look at it, and one may passively observe the stranger. You don't have to be aggressive. You just passively observe how the stranger who's next to you, who's sitting next to you, who's walking next to you, how their behavior, how they're behaving, what are the common traits, how you can initiate a conversation. So that's important. Passively observe the stranger. Then the second one is one may actively seek out information from other friends of the stranger or from books, or maybe you know people, you can tell you about how people interact here, what people like, what they don't like. So that's very important to kill the uncertainty bit of it. And then finally, one may seek information directly from the stranger by interacting with them and asking questions. That's much more appropriate. That's much more direct. It will give you a wider perspective. It helps a lot because when you're speaking to someone directly, it gives you first hand information. And in intercultural settings, first hand information gives you a very wide perspective. It helps you in understanding cultures, and that's how you broaden your knowledge about a particular culture you're living in. So, and in the end, also offering information about oneself also prompts reciprocal offerings of information from another. So, if you introduce yourself, if you talk about yourself, if you explain yourself, this is reciprocated, and they would just do the same. They would let you in, and they would tell you about themselves, and that's important information that we're talking about. So, yes, now let's talk about certain tips when you are interacting with strangers. These tips can help. Like the first one is to watch and learn whenever you go to a culture other than your own. the best you can do is to watch and learn what you see. Observations are important, and you learn by observing. So, observation is very important because if you are in a hurry, if you're making a quick movement, uh, that can be problematic. And then after this, what you can do is that you can always say hello. You can begin the conversations. You can initiate welcome. You can just show it by a gesture. You can make a friendly initiative that is called by starting conversations. So this is how you can basically improve conversing with strangers or communicating with strangers. And initiating a conversation can only happen when you watch and learn first. So when you watch and learn, after that, after some time, what you can do is that you can say hello, you can initiate discussions. That's how it happens. And then the third one is that go out and interact. The major reason why most of our students struggle in a foreign setting is that they do not socialize with the circumstances that are available to them, with people that are available to them, and the circumstances that are available to them. We What we see normally, the problem is that when Pakistanis go out, they usually try to find people from Pakistan. They usually go there and settle with them, spend their time. So what they miss out is that they miss out on the local culture, they miss out on the local language, they miss out on the local context. And this is where when they come back, they hardly had experience of foreign culture. So if you want to go out, my suggestion to students, particularly, I even discuss some of these things in the class as well, that whenever you visit a foreign culture or where a country which is different from yours, a setting different from yours, environment different from yours, try to observe it, try to interact with people, go out and interact. Because if you don't interact with people, you will never understand, you will never have context, you will never have the depth of their culture, and which is why you will never be able to have an intercultural perspective. So, in order to have an intercultural perspective, you must go out and interact, which is very important. Otherwise, you will not be able to have a local context in this regard. And then be prepared to initialize the contact with them because sometimes people in other cultures are very reserved. They have basically they have preconceived ideas about uh, the strangers coming to their country or foreigners coming to their country. So it's not easy for them. So you can initiate with good gesture, with a smile. People can understand because your facial expressions can also make it very easier. So the better facial expressions you have, a smiley, welcoming face, it will be easier for you to interact with people in a setting different from yours. And then if you can find and discuss common issues, this is our next point. The world, the best thing about humanity or human being is that we have more similarities than differences. So if we can find a common ground like family, way of life, respecting elders, or discussions that can be similar. Maybe there are cultures. If you look at Japan, they focus a lot on cleanliness, and if you can talk to them about you being a Muslim and your belief calling cleanliness half your faith, that can be an interesting discussion as well. So this is how you can find common grounds. The common grounds is the way to find your place among these people, to find your way in a different setting, and basically it helps a lot in communicating with strangers. And then after this, you can say that when you are done with all these three, four steps, that after watching and learning by saying hello, and after going out and interacting, when you find common interest, be friendly. Do not be aggressive, because if you are going to talk to them about your religion, your way of life, your family, do not be assertive. Do not let them have an idea that you are basically superior or you're different from them, you're better than them, because you are in their country. Let them know about you in a very polite way. You should tell them about your culture, your people, your way of life, your beliefs, but in a very polite manner. It should not be offensive. So always be friendly, not aggressive. This is our point. Be friendly and avoid being aggressive. And then don't be embarrassed about your nervousness. It's a very important point. Uh, Mostly, what happens when our students go out, they are embarrassed, they are nervous, they're confused, and it's natural because you are not familiar with the language, with the food, with the people. Anyone going out will have to face this nervousness. Even when I went to UK at the age of 19, when I was all alone, even I felt nervousness. I didn't know who to go to, who to ask guidance, and it was a very difficult phase for me, particularly not knowing the areas, which areas are good, which areas can be dangerous, which areas or which language or whatever places are. These kind of issues were causing a big stress on me as a very young student. So this is natural. It will happen to you. It has happened to us. It will happen to anyone who is going abroad and trying to adjust in a new settings. The problem is that when you uncertainty, it will always make you nervous. The point is uncertainty. The more uncertain you are, the more nervous you will be. And uncertainty can always be overcome by interacting, by talking to people. The more you talk, the more you interact, the more you uh, familiarize yourself with outdoor settings. That's where your nervousness will be reduced. And then important point is read more about the people and culture. Why I'm saying this, that times have changed and people have access to internet. They can have an understanding of what kind of people are living in a particular culture, what their general mindset is, what they like, what they don't like. Social media platforms are there. You can have guidance. For example, if you're going to Netherlands, you can join a page where you can learn about Netherlands culture, what they like, what you should do, the do's and don'ts of Netherlands or Germany or something or France. So these are the tips that are going to help you. Although these tips are not 100% accurate all the time, there may be slight variations when you reach there. You might find it completely different in some spaces, but it will give you a general idea of how the people are, and it will help you with your preconceived notions when you go there. Maybe it helps you in adjusting in a better way. And the last point is just be. Don't try to be someone else. Just be yourself. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of your ethnicity. Be proud of uh, your religion, your country. But don't impose it on others. That's the key point. Just be who you are. I mean, obviously, if you're born a Pakhtun, if you're born a Punjabi, if you're born a Sindhi, you cannot change that. That's who you are. But that's for you. You should always respect your values. You should always be cherishing it. But at the same time, you should not impose it on others. That's the key point. So, what did we learn? Obviously, we learned that interacting with stranger is not impossible. Obviously, when you go to a different place, you'll have different kind of people, strangers all around, and you'll have to interact with them at some point. Interactions gives you greater insights into a culture. So if you want to know about a different culture, the more you interact, the more you'll know and have better insights. And then obviously a last point is that communication is the key if we are to survive in a culture other than our own. So this is what our whole session was. We focused on interacting and communicating with strangers. It gives you better ideas about how to interact with people who are not familiar, and it will give you insights about culture different from yours. And this is how we try to adjust in different settings. So, and it's pretty natural if you are confused, if you're nervous, because new places will always give you an element of uncertainty, which will always make you nervous. So it's pretty natural if that happens to you. You don't have to worry about it. You just have to find your way out. And the more you speak, the more you reach out, the more you interact, finally there will be a time when you'll be there as if it was your own place. So I hope you enjoyed the session. These are the references. Basically, these are very good books that I'm using. I'll recommend it strongly, particularly the Think To Me one, the 2018 book, which is Communicating Across Cultures. It's an excellent book if you can read it. And I've always recommended some of the chapters, but if you can go through it, you'll really love the cross-cultural and intercultural communications taking place in different settings with examples that will help you. So thank you very much and have a great day. Thank you very much.